And then it's everything's lit up down here too.
What fun for you.
Yeah.
Not like the Northside Library or anything, is it?
No. They've got a brand new crew at Alpharetta. Apparently the doctor believes the guy has COVID, but his test came back negative because the doctor apparently said he's got all the symptoms of it.
And it can't be the flu?
Well, I don't think so, because his oxygen level's really low. He's got breathing problems. He's got pain in his lungs.
But he tested negative.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah,
Right,
so might be a false.
Dr. Ruth, is that
ladies and gentlemen, we're live now.
Okay.
We are live.
I'm calling this meeting to order. It is a special called meeting for July the 20th, 2020 of the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections. I am Mary Carol Cooney, the chairperson, and I'm joined this morning by my colleagues, Mr. Mark Wingate, Ms. Vernetta Keith Newridan, Dr. Kathleen Ruth, and Mr. Aaron Johnson. This teleconference meeting is authorized pursuant to section 50-14-1G of the Official Code of Georgia because of the public health state of emergency declared by Governor Kemp on March 14th, 2020 due to COVID-19, which was extended on June 29th, and because means have been afforded for the public to have simultaneous access to this teleconference. Ladies and gentlemen, you have in front of you an agenda. Please take a moment to review it, and I will entertain any additions or corrections.
Madam Chair, yeah, I have an addition to make to the agenda. It's going to be an announcement that will actually be presented by you. I would suggest that we do that in advance of going forward with any of the public comments.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I would just, okay, I'll do that.
Okay, is there a second? All right, it's been properly moved and seconded to amend our agenda to provide for an announcement. All in favor say aye. Yeah, and if you could raise your hands, Ms. Bodison, thank you. Mr. Wingate, Mr. Newridan, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Ruth, and the chair all say aye. She wants us to make plain our votes because the law requires it. And I will make that announcement, which is really that it is not only that this board owes a gesture of mourning and respect for the leadership of two great men who left us last Friday, July 17th, Congressman John Lewis and the Reverend C.T. Vivian. I think that it's our particular responsibility and honor to recognize that we, Fulton County's Board of Registration and Elections, and the dedicated staff of our Department of Registration and Elections share with these late leaders and must carry forward the great task of ensuring that the voices of all our citizens will be heard in elections that are open, available to every voter, and fairly counted, so that everyone can share in our American democracy. Having worked with you all, I am confident that the memory of John Lewis and C.T. Vivian inspires us, as John would exhort us, to never give up and never give in carrying out our task. If anyone else has anything to add, that will be received. And hearing none, thank you all for that opportunity. Item 2 on our agenda is communications and responses from the public. Ms. Bodison, has anyone asked to be heard?
Yes, ma'am. I currently have 6 attendees at the start of the meeting.
All right.
Ms. Dufort will be the first speaker.
Ms. DeFort,
There. Okay. I was thinking you were going to unmute me. Sorry. My name is Jean Dufort. I'm a member of the Coalition for Good Governance. Hours-long waits to vote on election day. It was your biggest problem in November 2018 and again in June 2020. The law says you must have one voting station for every 250 registered in every precinct. Following this new law is complicated by other laws. It's the election board's duty under the law to protect ballot secrecy, and it's not easy with the new Jumbotron voting tablets. You may only use machines that have undergone thorough testing. The new equipment requires many electric circuits. Social distancing requires more space between voting stations, and polling places come in various shapes and sizes. Fulton County did not meet the legal standard of one voting station for 250 voters in every precinct in June, and lines were intolerable in many polling places. Even during a pandemic, it's your duty to set up one voting booth for every 250 voters. But the law does not say that every booth must have a ballot marking device. I urge you to be faithful to all the statutes. In each precinct, set up as many ballot marking devices as you can while also protecting ballot secrecy and using only fully tested machines. Set up the remaining voting mark their ballot by hand. With record turnout projected, you may not have sufficient capacity, even if all stations are set up. You are required to have pre-printed ballots ready for at least 10% of registered voters, but you are not prohibited from printing more. You are required to train your poll managers and workers in how to use emergency paper ballots in case the machines aren't working, or when wait times exceed 30 minutes. You should be sure they understand how to use them to keep the lines moving. Setting up the maximum number of ballot marking devices possible, given the other constraints, and meeting the 1 in 250 requirement with stations set up for marking a ballot by hand is the only way I see to meet your duty to follow all of the statutes. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. DeFort. Ms. Bodison, who is next?
Kay Roberts, Ms. Roberts.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Shay Roberts. I'm a candidate for House District 52 and a Fulton County voter. COVID-19 affected our primary election in so many ways. It was a scramble to secure polling places and poll workers. Social distancing rules required changing in how in-person voting is conducted. Sadly, ballot secrecy was literally forgotten. Ballot secrecy is guaranteed in the Georgia Constitution. It's also required by the Help America Vote Act, known as HAVA. The law that enabled ballot marking devices says they must permit voting in absolute secrecy so that no person can see or know any other elector's votes. You have the duty to conduct all elections in such manner as to guarantee the secrecy of the ballot. It is absolutely clear under the law that in Georgia, ballot secrecy is not optional. It's equally clear the responsibility lies with you, the board, to protect it. And yet here we are. The Jumbotron voting tablets allow votes to be seen from across the room or even from outside. Press photos from the new State Farm Arena polling place are really alarming, whether from the floor or from the stands. It's going to be hard to prevent workers, voters, and observers from seeing how people vote. Director Barron has said that he is purchasing sneeze guards for added privacy, but sneeze guards are not made to protect secrecy. Has this board inspected sneeze guards? As a candidate, this is personal. I've met Republicans who say they will vote for me, but don't want to be seen as abandoning their party. How many Republicans don't want to vote for Trump, but will not feel comfortable voting their conscience if they must vote in public? It is your duty as a board to protect everyone's right to an absolutely secret ballot. The law says you must use the uniform system, including the BMDs, but the law also says it's your duty to protect absolute ballot secrecy. You don't get to choose which laws you follow. What is your plan to protect absolute ballot secrecy? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Who is our next citizen who wants to be heard?
Marilyn Marks.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Marilyn Marks. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Good Governance. Since the last Fulton board meeting, we've spent scores of hours studying the details of the June 9th problems, and we've concluded that those and similar problems will likely recur. The low turnout expected in August will have the effect of concealing the most excruciating issues that caused long lines and stalled voter check-in. We fear that the low turnout will create a false sense of comfort that many problems have been solved. We have submitted numerous letters to you, including one last night, yet again, urging this board to take its duties very seriously to meet all of the legal requirements to conduct fair and accurate elections, including the duty to protect voters' constitutional rights to a secret ballot. The board simply cannot pick and choose which laws it will follow and which it will ignore. We all understand that the use of the secretary's ill-considered choice of the BMD system escalates the risk of another Fulton failure, creating a truly impractical, unworkable solution. The deficiencies of the BMD system cannot be mitigated by muscling through it or testing shortcuts, hoping for the best. A different approach is required, such as the bimodal approach, which BMDs are to be used to the extent practical, as Jean Dufort just explained. Use BMDs to the extent you can to comply with all applicable laws and run a parallel hand ballot operation to satisfy all the requirements that cannot be met with 100% BMD use. As we wrote, we're seriously concerned about the fact that the machines were deployed across the county today for early voting, and they've not been tested to the minimum statutory requirements. Simply too risky and too unfair to the Fulton voters and candidates. We request this board immediately undertake actions to fulfill its full range of legal duties in all the remaining 2020 elections. Thank you.
Next, we have B. Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is B. Brown. I'm an intern for the Coalition for Good Governance. Part of my assignment in the last 2 weeks has been to observe the logic accuracy testing in Fulton County in advance of early voting. My coworker Harrison Tweet and I have both gone to the English Street facility on multiple occasions and inquired of the managers there to locate the pre-election testing of the BMDs. We were assigned to take part in the public observation of the testing. Although there are 3,300 touchscreens, 3,300 printers, and 300 scanners to be tested, we've been unable to find such testing occurring or scheduled in our visits and phone calls since the testing was scheduled to begin on July 9th. CGG analysts have estimated that the logic and accuracy testing of the equipment would take nearly 1,000 technician hours, yet we have been unable to find a time when testing is taking place. CGG's estimated hours of technician time are based on the testing that the statutes require that every BMD be tested for every race on every ballot and that all scanners be tested. Given that we have been unable to find a time that BMD testing could be observed, CGG is concerned that the testing is not being performed according to the minimum requirements. Perhaps there's a misunderstanding based on the Secretary of State's inadequate instructions. There's a widespread public understanding that the touchscreen system is vulnerable to attacks and human errors in programming. Taking any shortcuts in testing will undermine confidence in elections and create the basis for post-election challenges. I ask that you ensure that all machines are being thoroughly tested as required and that the testing be easily observable by the public. Thank you.
Rhonda Martin.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Martin. I am a Fulton County voter and a board member of the Coalition for Good Governance. You have all heard about the problem that Georgia counties encountered where the scanner tabulation software settings used when processing mail-in absentee ballots caused large numbers of valid votes not to be counted after detecting and recording them. To our knowledge, the urgent problem of the scanner tabulation software is not being addressed. Left unaddressed, thousands of valid votes will again go uncounted in August and November. And when voters learn that not all votes are being counted on mail ballots, it is natural to expect that more will insist on voting in person, defeating plans to move many in-person voters to mail balloting. Last week in a DeKalb meeting, the Secretary of State's office doubled down on the issue of not counting all the votes. further stating that the state election board may promulgate a rule that would prevent the counties from changing the threshold settings on the scanners. Fulton County should stand up and count all valid votes as required by Georgia law. Engage expert help to fully understand the software issues currently preventing accurate vote counting, and challenge any improper state election board rule to the contrary. Otherwise, using the problematic Dominion software on default settings will continue to result in high numbers of uncounted votes. Please note that performing adjudication on screen does not solve this problem. Another issue that should be of great concern to you is that Fulton County's hand duplication process for absentee ballots rejected by scanners does not involve marking original and hand duplicated ballots so that they can be traced back to one another as required for any legitimate audit trail. The fact that you allowed yourselves to be used by the Secretary of State's office to pilot its risk limiting audits while violating the basic assumptions of the underlying statistics.
Eileen Nakamura. Ms. Nakamura.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'm Eileen Nakamura, Sandy Springs voter and a Coalition for Good Governance member. On the morning of June 9th, I spoke with two voters, both waiting at different polling places that should have opened at 7 a.m., but the lines weren't moving. In fact, when one of them managed to speak to a poll manager, she was told that everything was down and the only option was to use provisional ballots. When this voter asked about using emergency paper ballots, she was told that she could not put it in because the poll pads weren't working either. 10 days ago, I mentioned to this board that the largest area of bottlenecks that led to long lines in June was the check-in process using new poll pads. Since then, have you met your duty as a board to make sure that voters can keep checking in and voting, even when the poll pads or BMDs fail again or the lines get long? The easy solution is to provide updated paper poll book backups in every polling place to permit the check-in process even when the system is down, and to make sure that there are paper ballots available for the voters to cast their votes on, instead of using provisional ballots, which create long lines and delays. The paper poll book backups must be printed after early voting ends and include absentee and early voting statuses so they can be used to check people in on election day. The law calls this a certified electors list, and it is your duty to ensure that every polling place has one and knows how to use it. This updated list would be used as the official record if there's a discrepancy or problem with the electronic poll book. In fact, you should consider that a super low-cost way to expand capacity and reduce wait times would be to add a paper poll book check-in station in every polling place. I urge you to do your best to guarantee that voting will not stop due to poll pad or BMD failure by making sure that polling places have two simple things: at least one updated paper poll book backup to check people in, and enough paper ballots for people to mark by hand. Thank you.
I think we've lost Mary Carroll.
Okay, and the last public comment is from Liz Throop. Ms. Throop?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Liz Troop. I live in DeKalb and I was a poll watcher in Fulton County for early voting. When I arrived at Fulton County's South Services Center on May 19th, voters told me it was taking an hour or more to vote, even though there were only about 25 people in line. There were two carriers, each with 3 BMDs, so social distancing was impossible. A voter confirmed she had to stand shoulder to shoulder with a stranger to use her touchscreen and was concerned about COVID exposure. A woman looking close to 80 years old, walking unsteadily with a cane, asked me if she had to wait in line to drop off her completed absentee ballot. I told her that I thought she could just walk in, since cab voters can drop off completed ballots at polling places during early voting. She was allowed to go to the front of the line, and I expected her to be finished quickly, but she didn't come back outside for over 20 minutes. She told me that they had made her check in, surrender her completed ballot, and vote on a machine. It was a brief conversation because her ride was waiting for her. Fulton County cannot complain about too few poll workers, too little space for voting machines, or give excuses about long lines if they aren't helping people vote efficiently. This woman held up the voting line because Fulton did not accommodate her simple request to drop off an absentee ballot. Allow ballot drop off at early voting locations. You have a duty to this small, easy to accomplish, but important step towards serving voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else wishing to be heard?
No, Madam Chair.
If so, that concludes our communications and responses from the public. Thank you all. And that also brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is an update, a communications update from Mr. Barron and Ms. Jessica Corbett.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I had to. Good morning. This is Jessica Corbett, Director of External Affairs for Fulton County. Mr. Barron and I have kind of a division of labor, so I'm going to give you a quick update on our communication plan for this election, and then Mr. Barron is going to take over and also give it an update as well. So I am going to start, and I'm sharing my screen here, and I hope you all can see it. I was inspired, Madam Chair, by your words about Congressman Lewis and Mr. Vivian, and I have shared a photo on our screen of Mr. Congressman Lewis the last time he voted during early voting in March in the Fulton County Government Center. And we'll certainly miss him. I'm going to give a quick update of some of the things that we have worked on as a department to support the Department of Registration and Elections for this upcoming election cycle. And I'm just going to start with kind of an overview of the challenge, and some of the comments during public comment today really highlight this. And I apologize for the extended animation. So to start with, we saw in June the challenges that were faced by Fulton County and governments across the state and across the country in conducting all government services during a pandemic, and particularly elections. This election, the June 9th election, was a perfect storm of a brand new voting equipment being implemented in the midst of a very high profile pandemic, multiple polling location changes, date changes, poll worker engagement, training, social distancing, every single portion of the election process, like all of the processes that we are and services we provide as a government, were affected, but in this case, particularly so. And the outcome of that was frustration, disappointment by voters, of course, and also by the poll workers themselves and everyone affected by this election. So I think that we are not saying anything anyone doesn't know when we say we want to make improvements. We want to see a better experience for voters and return to our best work as a government and as a county and as the Department of Registration and Elections. So what we have taken on as our particular communication challenge, in addition to the normal kinds of things we would communicate about, such as where to go, when to go, we also want to make sure voters are aware of the things that have happened to improve the process between June and August. And Mr. Barron will talk more about that in a few minutes. So specifically, we had a few guiding principles here. One was about trust. We want to ensure that voters can trust the system, that it works correctly, that things work the way they're supposed to work the first time, and most importantly, of course, that everyone's vote counts. It's also important that voters understand that the system is intended to support voters equitably throughout Fulton County, that resources are deployed equitably, and that the system is there for them. And then last but certainly not least, the concept of transparency, that voters need to understand what's happening when, and they need to be able to see into their own voting experience. In communicating some of to kind of get to those guiding principles, we have, I've just cataloged here sort of the owned and paid, earned, and shared assets that we have and channels that we have available to us to communicate. So we have, of course, Fulton County, many of you are familiar with Fulton Government Television, which live streams all of your meetings. We have stories almost every week about elections processes. We also have significant digital assets. We have a website, email, and social media channels. We also do a lot of work with our elected officials. Obviously, Fulton County media and Metro Atlanta media are very interested in the operations of all elections, but especially Fulton County. And then we've also looked at some paid resources such as direct mail and advertising. The key audiences, of course, are voters themselves. Senior voters and student voters are specialty groups that we want to reach. Influencers and community groups, particularly elected officials, student groups, and service organizations. Poll workers, and our media. And there are a few key messages that we will be highlighting throughout this and have already begun. The first is that Fulton County is making it both convenient and safe for voters to cast their ballots in person and by mail. We have done a lot of work around early voting, and Fulton County has historically had one of the strongest early voting programs in the state of Georgia, but even so, we are making early voting bigger and better than before. We have improved our processes by adding more locations, more poll workers, improving training, and improving absentee ballot processing. That because of the ongoing pandemic and because we want to ensure a positive voter experience, we encourage voters to cast their ballot by absentee ballot or early voting if possible. And those voters who are going to the polls on election day should verify their polling place in case it has changed since June. And that's the next agenda item that you'll hear. In achieving these tactics, the first is direct mail, and I shared with you all last week a direct mail piece that is going to every voter household that highlights early voting, absentee by mail, and also provides instruction regarding verifying your polling place for election day. We're also working with influencers and doing community outreach, and our team has been working extensively with elections on this. We also have provided email blasts and social media graphics. We work continuously on website enhancements, and I wanted to mention that we will be doing a sort of blind, if you will, focus group on website improvements to get some kind of cold voter feedback on how to find things, their ease of experience and user testing to help us enhance our website further so voters can find the information they need, and ongoing media and public relations engagement. Just a quick snapshot of the timeline for this specific election cycle. And I'd like to mention that we will build upon this further for November because there's a lot more coming and a lot of additional improvements that will take place before the November general election. So going back a couple of weeks, we made the announcement regarding the use of State Farm Arena, and thanks to this board for making that happen. There was frankly national and international media around that announcement, and several other cities and counties have followed suit after that announcement with the Hawks. We also, after that, announced all of the early voting locations. And in the last week or so, we have worked on the voter mailing I mentioned earlier. Of course, additional website updates. I've shared with you all an infographic about absentee ballots, and we've also communicated about the email standards for absentee ballot processing. We provided on Friday a media tour for all of our local outlets about early voting at State Farm Arena. And actually, Ms. Waller is there right now. There have been some media outlets there at State Farm. We've included voter updates in our weekly email blast. And starting this week, we will have dedicated email blasts for voting. And of course, I should have mentioned here FGTV stories as well, overlaying all of this. Over the weekend, we provided kind of a reminder to our influencer groups, especially elected officials, about early voting that is beginning today. And then as you see throughout this, we will continue after today's vote, we will be focusing on election day polling place changes and making those continuous updates and reminders about early voting and absentee voting. One thing I would mention is that we're also leveraging other Fulton County customer contacts. For example, our tag offices are now open. We're providing the mailing to them so they can remind voters again about early voting opportunities and absentee ballot opportunities. Fulton County libraries are now offering curbside service. We will use the libraries in that manner to promote early voting and absentee by mail as well. Moving into election day, we will provide an election day briefing or a pre-election day briefing to talk about some of the other improvements, and you'll hear more about that from Mr. Barron in a moment. And as our custom on election day, we will ensure that we provide access through press briefings. We also will have, as part of the call center setup, have our social media team embedded to be able to respond to issues, information, misinformation brought forward. Just for those who have not seen it, I'm providing a screenshot here of the mailer that is going to voters that folks should be seeing in their mailboxes now. This is, again, the absentee ballot infographic that kind of explains the process of absentee ballots. And that is it. I can take any questions, or I think Mr. Barron is going to go over the next slides.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett. Mr. Barron?
Okay, Jessica, can you
Yes.
get to, this is what I'm going to go over is what's different or what's changed between June and August. So of course, the challenge that we had for June, we had several issues, including high turnout, high volume of voters assigned to precincts, new equipment, staffing challenges due to COVID, and all that resulted in minimum staffing levels. And that created a sense of stress among poll workers. And a poll worker survey helped us pinpoint some of those additional issues. I think we also had a lack of in-person training, which also affected things. So for the June 9th election, we had the poll manager, assistant manager, line manager, and tech support was either on call or we had some assigned to precincts and there were some rovers. For June 9th, we'll have all of that. Plus, we are adding an additional poll clerk at every site, and we will have one technician at every polling site. We have, we're working with 3 different firms to ensure that we have trained technicians at each one of those sites. Meals will also be provided by the county to all poll workers on site. Jessica, can you? For poll worker training, we of course had very limited poll worker training. The techs, we trained those people in person right before the election, but we have made refinements based on feedback from a group of experienced poll managers. They came in and into the office and went through all of our training materials to help us develop better curriculum. We're conducting in-person training for every poll worker, including hands-on training with the poll equipment. And we've added a customer service component for every poll worker in that training as well. In the June 9th election, with regard to early voting, we had 5 sites initially. We had 3 additional sites added during the 2nd and 3rd weeks for a total of 8 sites. This election, we're back toward our normal number of sites. We will have 20 early voting locations in week 3. We have 19 open right now. We have 18 that we split between the 6 commissioner precincts so that we make sure to have equal number represented throughout the county. And then we have the 1 mega site here at State Farm Arena, and that's centrally located. We will have 1 outreach site at Palmetto Library, which opens August 3rd, will be open from the 3rd through the 7th. And that is a site that is closest to 2 of our runoff races. We're targeting 40% of votes during early voting. That does not include absentee by mail. Whoops. For the absentee ballots, of course, the June 9th, we had historically high volume of absentee ballots. We counted more than 3 times more than we do for a presidential election, and we had a 140-fold increase in applications over the 2016 general primary. We had challenges processing emailed applications due to varying formats and technical issues, and it was difficult to support the call volume. So for August 11th, we established a dedicated call center. We were able to get a space in the county, and we have 32 people in that call center. We've never actually had an absentee by mail and early voting call center before. So this is something that's really going to help us out over these next 3 weeks. We will keep that call center open, and we will also move back to our former call center on election day. And I think that's going to be something that'll be noted in a slide coming up. We did set a standard for email absentee ballots. We have communicated that on a mailing, on our website, and other communications. We are accepting emailed applications as long as they're between 1 megabyte and 5 megabytes in size, and that they're either a PDF or a JPEG. Our staff will get in touch with the voter if it doesn't meet the standards that we set. We anticipate that the state has told us by August 15th, they will have a portal set up for people to submit their absentee ballot applications. And that is going to be a key to have a good intake mechanism going forward, and also to be able to reconcile everything that's processed electronically. We are accepting absentee applications via the absentee ballot drop boxes as well. We have 20 of those around the county. With regard to polling locations, we were going to have 198 for June. We ended up with 164 locations. 45 total polling locations were changed due to COVID, and that resulted in several precincts that had an assignment of more than 10,000 voters. Right now, and you will have before you in the next agenda item to approve some new polling sites for August. That will get us up to 175 locations, which will reduce the number of voters per location. We hope to get that up above 210 locations by the time the November election rolls around. We've been able to get some of our old polling locations to come back online, and we're adding new ones. And as soon as the board approves the polling site locations today, we will send the notifications out to the voters for them so they will know where they need to vote on election day. With voting equipment, we had new voting machines implemented across Georgia. June 9th election was the first time this equipment was used on election day. Many polling locations in Fulton County and across Georgia experienced issues. Fulton County has sought solutions to ensure adequate equipment. And so for June, we had roving technicians and some that were assigned. The first time the equipment was used created challenges for us throughout the county. For this election, we have modified our supply checklist to make sure that all accessories are available. We will also have somebody out at the warehouse doing quality control to make sure all supplies are in the supply boxes, and equipment will be connected to power to test electrical connections on Monday, August 10th. At 3 a.m. on election day, equipment will be unsealed, powered on, and ready for the day. We will get that done several hours ahead of the polls opening in order to correct any issues that may arise. And we will also have a dedicated technician at each one of the polling locations on election day. For support, when issues arise, it's important that managers and our technicians can call and get information to them that they need at that moment. And the June 9th election, we had our call center relocated from its normal location. We usually use the Emergency Operations Center. We moved it to the call center area that we're using for early voting and election day. But now we're going to add that back, the Emergency Operations Center on election day, and have the call center open that we currently are using. So we will have more than enough phone support for this election and for November. It was difficult, of course, to get information to the polls in a timely manner with the reduced number of people in our call center. For the August 11th election, the poll technicians that will be out there will be able to download. We've ordered iPads, so they'll be able to download and use the WebEOC app, which reports issues, and they can use it to not only report issues, but then also let us know when they've corrected those issues, and they can also ask for support through that app. The call center will return, as I said, to the Emergency Operations Center. All polls are going to be stocked with supplies for 100% voter turnout, and all of this will make sure all the supplies are well labeled as well. And I believe, yeah, that's the last slide. So Jessica and I can take questions about the communications plan and the updates.
All right, I'm going to ask my, first of all, thank you. That was most encouraging. I'm going to ask my fellow board members if they have questions. If you can raise your hand, that would be nice. And I am not seeing, I'm seeing Dr. Ruth's hand first. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much for a very informative presentation. And I echo Madam Mary Carroll's comment, encouraging. I do have a question as it relates to influencers. Can you give Jessica an example of some of the influencers that you are communicating with?
Good morning. Thank you. That's a great question. So one of the things that we have included, as I mentioned, were elected officials. So not only the county commissioners, but the mayors of our 15 cities, our city communication staff along with them, our legislative delegation, our school board members. So those are some of the elected groups. We also have a very broad group of nonprofits and community organizations. So groups such as the Urban League, for example, nonprofit groups that are serving constituents, many of whom are partners for Fulton County in receiving funding. I'll give an example. Hosea Helps is one that's very well known, or United Way. So we just want to make sure to cast that net as broadly as possible. If there are recommendations from any of the board members, please share those with us and we will include those in those distributions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then my last question, you mentioned curbside service. Can you describe what that looks like?
Sure. This is something that our libraries, and I have to say that almost every department in Fulton County has had to modify its service delivery in some way. So our libraries now are offering what they call curbside service. So if you want to reserve a book at your neighborhood library, you can do so online. And basically there's a process where you would be able to go by without entering the library facility and pick up those books. They will just place them in your car. So especially right now when I know my children are at home driving us crazy. I know lots of families are looking for ways to keep their children engaged and continuing to learn. That's how the Fulton County Library System is supporting them. So we're simply providing copies of our flyers to them so they can include that when people are coming by to get their curbside book delivery.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know, how this is really voted. So yeah.
That was a long explanation. Yeah. Thank you.
Is that, does that conclude your questioning, Dr. Ruth? Thank you. Ms. Nuruddin.
Yes, thank you. I agree. The report was awesome, and I'm hopeful for this cycle. I wanted to ask Ms. Corbett if she would consider adding the Board of Registration and Elections to her email list to the influencers.
Thank you. Of course.
And oh yes, and thank you too. And also for the website and the communication that goes out on the website, does that fall under your department?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
If I may follow up on Ms. Nuruddin's question, can we get a copy of your presentation?
Yes.
Email to the board.
Of course.
Quickly. Okay. Let's see. Other board members, Mr. Wingate.
Ms. Corbett.
Yes, sir.
How much coverage can you get from the local television community?
I think we get a lot of coverage. I would say that we have multiple stories every week, especially around election cycles that will focus. So for example, on Friday, we provided, as I mentioned, a tour of State Farm Arena to highlight early voting and this unique partnership with the Atlanta Hawks organization. Every local television station was at that tour. And so we had extensive coverage there. I think that we've had, I think 2 or 3 of those same stations come back today to for the first day of early voting, to be able to cover the setup and to see people voting in action. We have assigned staff to make sure that we are there. In fact, I see Mr. Barron is there at State Farm and is available to talk with. I think he's already done at least 1 interview this morning. So we have a lot of interest in Fulton County in particular. And our goal is to work with Mr. Barron and to work with the department and this board to ensure that information is accurate and timely, and that it it tells, our side of the story. Often we've seen matters where there are differences of opinion or perspective, and I think it's important for people to understand where Fulton County stands on any issue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Johnson, do you have any questions? Thank you. There's a question from one of our observers as to whether the drop boxes are going to be video monitored during.
Yes, they're monitored by Fulton County Police.
Okay, and every one of them.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. If those are all of the questions, then that would conclude item number 3 on our agenda. And we can get to item number 4, which is to approve, to consider polling place changes for August 11th and to approve them.
Nadine will be doing this.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board.
Good morning.
We are proposing the following polling place changes. For proposal 4120, precinct 02A and 0201, currently at Park Tavern, we are proposing to relocate to Piedmont Park, Magnolia Hall, to reduce the number of voters assigned to the precinct. For proposal 4220, precincts 02B, 02L2, and 05D, currently at Liberty Baptist Church, we are permitted to return the precinct to St. Luke's Episcopal Church. We were displaced due to COVID, but they are allowing us to return, and we would like to return to St. Luke's. Proposal 4320, precinct 06F, Butler Street Baptist Church. The renovations have been completed at Ponce de Leon Library, and we would like to return to Ponce de Leon Library. Proposal 4420, precinct 07D, is currently at Peachtree Presbyterian Church. The renovations have been completed for Buckhead Library, and we would like to return to Buckhead Library. Proposal 4520, precinct 08D, currently at Morris Brandon Elementary School. The renovations have been completed at Northside Library. We would like to return to Northside Library. Proposal 4620, precinct 10C, currently at C.T. Martin Recreation Center. To reduce the number of voters assigned to the precinct and reduce voter lines, we would like to relocate that precinct to the old Adamsville Emergency Shelter. Precinct 4720, proposal 4720, precinct JC04, A, B, and C, currently at Messiah Lutheran Church. Renovations have been completed at Robert Fulton OC Library, and we'd like to return to the library. Proposal 4820 for precinct JC12, currently at Dalvin Elementary School. Renovations have been completed at Northeast Spruill Oaks Library. We would like to return to the library. Proposal 4920 for precinct SC211 and SC212, currently at Christian City Welcome Center. We would like to reduce the number of voters assigned to that precinct and place those voters at Oakley Elementary School. And finally, for proposal 5020 for precinct SS01, currently at Johns Creek Environmental Campus. We were displaced due to COVID from Life Center Ministries. They're allowing us to return, and we would like to return the precinct to Life Center Ministries. And that concludes our proposal changes.
I would ask my fellow board members if they have questions or comments, and if you could raise your hand, I can actually see you pretty easily. But I am not seeing any hands raised. And that's good. And if that is correct, that no hands are raised, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the precinct changes.
Ms. Newridden, did I?
Try to second.
It's okay. I can read lips. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve all of the precinct changes, polling place changes that were presented to us. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, please raise your hand so that Ms. Bodison can see. And Mr. Johnson, I assume your hand was up. Yes. All opposed? The ayes have it, and it is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right. That concludes everything on our agenda except whether any member of the board wishes to go into executive session to discuss personnel or litigation matters. And hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn this meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your presence.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.